What is up? What is going on, everybody? Thought we'd mix it up and talk a little Seattle Seahawks today with the first wave of free agency or the tampering session. I don't know what you call it, but free agency has begun in the NFL. So I thought I'd do a little video, my thoughts on what the Seahawks have done so far, my thoughts on what they might do, and just my thoughts on their approach as a whole. Couple things before I get started. If you're new here, hit the like button. No, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button, whether you're new here or not. For more Seahawks content, obviously the main focus of this channel is the Mariners, but we do talk Seahawks every now and then here. So if you're a Hawks fan, hit that sub button. And if you guys are going to any games, concerts, any events, download the SeatGeek app or go to the website. Use promo code JS Trident for $20 off your first time purchase on SeatGeek. A lot of sporting events coming up, and there's other stuff on there too. So download the app. Green means it's a good deal. Red means it's a bad deal on there. So use that promo code and save yourself $20 on your first time purchase on SeatGeek. Apologize again for the background here. This week or next week, I should have some of my stuff back up. I know the video is a little grainy. I don't have my camera right now, so I'm just doing this off of a computer. I was able to grab my mic, obviously, so I do apologize. I mean, it's not like it's anything weird in the background, just a background in a room, but, my Seahawks stuff, Mariners stuff, all that should have that back pretty soon here. So free agency has begun in the NFL. The Seahawks have made a couple moves. I'll talk about those in a minute. They've re-signed Noah Fant and Leonard Williams. I do have my phone near me, so if anything happens, I'll adjust. This isn't a live stream, but it could kind of turn into one, if they make any moves here while I'm doing the video. First and foremost, I would tell everybody here with NFL free agency, especially Seahawks fans, to take a deep breath, no matter what happens here. This is essentially, and I know John Schneider is not new, so it's not necessarily a new regime from that standpoint, but kind of a new role for John. He has now got final say on the roster as before. He reported to Pete. So even though we have some idea what John liked and wanted to do, everything had to go to Pete Carroll. I'm not saying Pete meddled in. I don't know how, the whole thing worked, but the bottom line is John is now the final say in the roster. You have a completely new coaching staff now led by Mike McDonald, Ryan Grubb, Andre Dirty, I think that's how you pronounce it, the new defensive coordinator. Leslie Frazier's in the building. So you've got a new direction, for the most part, for what the organization wants to do. Yes, John's been here for 14 years, but, it's kind of the first time to make a roster in his vision. I'm not saying the team hasn't done that in the past, but he is, like I said, now final say along with Coach McDonald. My philosophy is this: they get a year or two to kind of do their thing. I am not going to be too critical of roster moves. That doesn't mean you guys can't be. And I'm not saying that, like, if they traded Devin Witherspoon for, future salary relief, I would say, oh, you got to let them do it. No, that's obviously a bad move. But everything else that's on the fringe, I'm going to let them build this roster their way. They deserve a year or two before we start going, okay, what's the game plan here? What kind of roster are they trying to build? Because we really don't know yet. Even in Baltimore, we can look at that and say, okay, these are the type of players Mike McDonald likes and can work with, but we don't know as a head coach what Mike McDonald might do. Remember, he's just a DC in Baltimore. Ozzie Newsome and John Harbaugh. Is DaCosta still in Baltimore? I'm not even sure, but like those are the people that have the final say. That doesn't mean a defensive coordinator doesn't have input, but he may not even have liked some of the things that they did. Who knows? So number one is just take a deep breath on it. Let them try to build this roster their way. When Pete Carroll was hired along with John Schneider in the 2009 going into 2010 offseason, the team made a ton of moves that people were skeptical of. And you might think it's crazy now, but people were upset that they traded Darryl Tapp. They were like, he's a young pass rusher. Chris Clemens, who they acquired in the trade, was older and had a couple decent seasons, but looked like somebody that was maybe past his prime. There were people mad that they traded Seneca Wallace for a 7th round pick because he was a solid backup. Everybody was like, oh, they're just going to draft USC players because that's all Pete Carroll knows. Now, obviously, these are extreme takes, but they were out there. And guess what? 2-3 years later, what was it? 2010 was the first year, 3 seasons into the regime, they won a Super Bowl. So obviously they had some idea of what they were doing. And there were people that did not like the offseason they were having. So deep breath, like just with anything that this team does, because we don't know the vision that they want to take it. We don't really have a track record either. Like, had they hired Dan Quinn, we'd have a little bit more of like, okay, we've seen Dan Quinn as a head coach. He did this. Is this what he's doing again? Was this a mistake? It was a mistake in Atlanta. Is this going to work out in Seattle? We really don't know with Mike McDonald. Truthfully, he hasn't even been a DC in the NFL for that long. And I love the hiring. This isn't anything to be negative, but until we see the product on the field, I'm not going to be too up in arms. Like, my gosh, this team hasn't even played a game yet, and in this new regime. So just a deep breath on anything they do in free agency. I bring that up because a few Seahawks have left. First of all, Colby Parkinson is going to the Rams for 3 years, $23 million. I like Colby Parkinson. Good big target. Always would like to see him get a few more reps in Seattle. I think an underrated blocker, not a great blocker. PFF graded him very well as a blocker. I think that's a small sample size on that, but I think he's decent enough to be a starting tight end in the league. But Seattle did re-sign Noah Fant to a 2-year, $21 million deal. I wanted to bring that up because we know they already released Will Dissly. Love Will Dissly, great guy, but you couldn't pay him $8 million. He's looked slower, good blocking tight end, an okay receiving option, but you can't pay Will Dissly that much money. And he moves on to the Chargers for 3 years, $14 million. So to me, it was kind of between Parkinson and Fant. Either one would have been fine. And the Seahawks select to go with Noah Fant for 2 years, $21 million. I think Fant's a good fit with Ryan Grubb's system. People forget Noah Fant is still just 26 years old. I think there's this notion out here that it feels like he should be older. I don't know why I feel that way, but feels like he's been around for a while, but still a very young player, super athletic. Is he much of a blocker? No, but he doesn't need to be in Ryan Grubb's scheme, I don't think. You can use him as essentially, another wide receiver, almost kind of that fourth option there. So I think it's a good fit. I think Parkinson would be a good fit too, but you couldn't do both of them. And maybe they tried on Parkinson, maybe they didn't, but they decided to go with Noah Fant. I'm fine with that. I would have brought back one of those guys, me personally. But again, this is something where, I know some people preferred Parkinson. I know some people are big on Noah Fant. I don't think Shane Waldron ever had like a great grasp on it. I thought they did some neat things with the tight ends, but he never seemed. Everything with Waldron was just kind of here and there. I don't think Waldron was a terrible play designer. I think he was struggled as a play caller. That doesn't mean Ryan Grubb's going to be great either. We haven't seen him in the NFL, but I do think Fant's a good fit for his system and what he likes to do. And like I said, I think you needed to bring one of those guys back at least. I don't think you can go into the draft with nothing at tight end. And I think Fant could really succeed. He's, like I said, he's athletic enough, still just 26. I think he's got good after the catch ability, so it's just a matter of what you prefer there. And maybe they preferred Parkinson. I don't know. One thing to remember too is that, and I'll bring it up when I get to Jordan Brooks. A lot of people seem upset about losing Jordan Brooks, but there's also no guarantee that these guys wanted to come back either. You have to remember that in free agency as well. We tend to think like, oh, why wouldn't the Seahawks match that offer? Why wouldn't the Mariners match that offer? There's a chance that some of these guys wanted fresh starts. Maybe they did offer Colby Parkinson that deal. And he was like, you know what? I think he's from California, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go back. And I don't know what part of California. He went to Stanford, so he might be from Northern California, which is still far away from Southern California. But he may have wanted a fresh start. He may have been like, hey, I'm going to get more reps with the Rams, so I'm taking that deal. That's just one thing to remember too, is we don't know. Some of these guys may just want fresh starts in new places. So maybe some of the Seahawks are trying to do, but just can't. And then remember too, like, this doesn't really apply to John Schneider as much. It's kind of a weird dynamic because you got John still here, but Mike McDonald's new. So let's just look at it from Mike McDonald's standpoint. Like, if you are upset about losing Colby Parkinson, he's not Mike McDonald's guy. He may like him. He may not like him. I don't know, but there's no attachment there. It's going to be the same thing I'm going to talk about Jordan Brooks here in a minute. Mike McDonald may be like, yeah, they're okay, but it's just not guys I want to fit my system. Maybe Ryan Grubb, same thing, was like, yeah, I prefer Noah Fant because this, and this. So, and until the product is on the field, I'm just, like I said, I'm not going to be too judgy on what they do because, they may look at it as a little bit of a rebuild. San Francisco's window's still open a little bit. We can take a step back, build up some draft capital, and they get comp picks for these as well. I think Colby Parkinson gets them a 6th-round comp. I think Jordan Brooks is getting them a 5th-round comp. And listen, I give it. So, well, I'd rather Parkinson than the 6th-round pick. That's fair, but they're building up draft capital here that they can use to fill out the roster. And again, it's just, these guys don't belong to Mike McDonald. Same thing in 2009 with Pete Carroll. One thing I remember saying back then is like a little bit different from today, because I think the roster today wasn't terrible. They did go 9-8. They weren't a disaster. They just weren't good enough. Now in 2009, the roster was bad. It was old, decrepit. And it was like, we sit here and complain like change is needed, change is needed, change is needed. Then a new regime came in 2010, made changes, and people were upset. Again, that roster, I think the 2009 team was way worse than the 2023 team, but kind of the same thing here. Now, some of it may have been Pete, some of it may have been Shane Waldron, some may have been Clint Hurt, just not good enough to get the most out of these players. But it's never just the coaching. Sometimes it's the players too. And if you want the team to get better, you can't just bring back every single guy that was on the roster in 2023 either. So some guys are going to move on. That brings me to Jordan Brooks, who signs for 3 years, I think $30 million with the Miami Dolphins. Would I have brought Brooks back in the deal? Yeah, I think that's fair. If you watch, Griff and Maddie, and I think Ty's on with them as well. They do a great job breaking down. I know they're big Jordan Brooks fans, and those guys know more about football and things than I will ever even dream to know about. And they were big Jordan Brooks guys. So it kind of started, I think, this trend of people wanting Jordan Brooks back in Seattle. And I would have been fine with it. And I would have been fine with that deal. But your new head coach was the top defensive coordinator in football last year, ran the best defense in the league, and by all accounts was considered one of the best hires of this offseason, not just by me, but by people that know a lot more about football than I do. Let him build the defense the way he wants to build it. He had tape on Jordan Brooks. He talked to John about him. Like it, and like, again, maybe they did offer him a deal and Brooks just wanted a change of scenery or something like that. I don't know. So maybe that's what happened. Or maybe he's just someone that Mike McDonald doesn't want in the system and they think they can get someone better. Maybe that's Patrick Queen, who the Seahawks have been rumored to be interested in. Listen, you might say, well, I think Brooks is better than Queen. And maybe you do. That's fine. I'm not telling you how to think, but I am telling you to take a step back and let Mike McDonald do his thing, at least for 1 year before we start getting into like, this is terrible. How Queen is worse than Brooks. Why would they do this? Like, by our knowledge, yes, but the best D coordinator in the league last year may think differently and think that he can get more out of Queen. The system. They even signed Patrick Queen. So let them do their thing here and let's see how it plays out. Now, we may look back. It may, in hindsight, turn out to be the wrong decision to let Jordan Brooks walk or to let Colby Parkinson walk. That may very well be the case. But I'm just not going to jump on these guys for moves in their first offseason regime. Anytime you hire somebody, and put them in a managerial position or something, or a coach, whatever it may be, you kind of got to let them do it their way, at least for a little bit before you start going, okay, I think that's a problem. As long as it's within reason, obviously. I'm not talking extreme stuff here, but if it's within reason, then you kind of need to let them do it and just see how it plays out. Because listen, let's be honest. What the Seahawks have been doing the last 5 years or so, it's working. I don't want to say it's not working. They've made several playoff appearances and they've been a consistently good franchise, but we want this team to win a Super Bowl, right? That's ultimately what the goal is to win a Super Bowl. And this team has not felt like a Super Bowl contender since, maybe 2018, 2019, but even then they felt like a tier below the true Super Bowl contenders. And what they've been doing just, it hasn't fully worked. So I'm willing to let this new organization, this new regime, I know John's been here, but new coaching staff, new hierarchy, do their thing. Leonard Williams re-signed 3 years, $64 million, $63 million. So a little over $20 million a year, which is pretty steep. But I thought Leonard Williams was great last year for this team. Seahawks traded a second and a fifth for him last year, which looking back in hindsight, probably a little too steep. That second round pick would be really nice to have right now. I'm not going to lie. But I defended the trade at the time. And at the time, Seattle was 5-2. They were actually in first place above the Niners. Now, I didn't think they were better than the Niners, but they had just lost in Wosu. And they went out and got, one of the best trade targets that was on the market. And I said in countless post-game videos last year, I kind of felt bad for Leonard Williams because he played really well. He really did. 4.5 sacks with the Seahawks from an interior D-line position. Looked solid against the run. I don't have any PFF numbers in front of me, but he played really well. I think everybody would agree with that. But the team just wasn't winning. Like, their schedule got tougher. They just started going downhill overall. No fault of Leonard Williams. But great to see that he resigned, enjoyed his time in Seattle, obviously enough to want to stay here even with a new head coach. And some of my philosophies changed when the new head coach, when McDonald came in to replace Pete. With Pete here, I was much more like, yeah, you got to bring back Leonard Williams. You can't trade that draft pick for him, see the impact he made, and then not bring him back. I still love the move, but I was a little bit more whatever with McDonald here, just because, again, he didn't trade the draft picks for Leonard Williams. Now, John Schneider did again, and he's still here. But if McDonald's like, no, don't want that guy back. Again, I'm not saying that should have been his take, and obviously it's not. But, again, willing to let a really good defensive mind build his defense, regardless of who he wanted to bring in or bring back. But Leonard Williams is back. Obviously, Seattle cleared a ton of cap space this week. Talked about, Adams, Diggs, Disley all released. And then Nick Bellore was released, and Tyler Lockett's contract was restructured. So Seattle did open up a ton of cap space. And I think people thought they were going to be very active in free agency. But, so far it's just been kind of bringing guys back. And I like both moves. I think Noah Fant's going to be a good fit in Ryan Grubb's offense. Leonard Williams, I thought, played really well last year for the Seahawks. I'm excited to see what Mike McDonald is going to do with him, moving him around on the defensive line, having him line up, as an edge, kind of a 5 tech, maybe have him inside. And you should have Nwosu back as well. But I think having him on the edge with Leonard Williams on the inside could really, really make a nice defensive front for Seattle. And hopefully with a little bit better coaching on the defense this year, going from Clint Hurt. And I love Pete to death. So I'm never going to say anything to badmouth Pete. But I think at this stage in their careers, I trust Mike McDonald to run a defense a little bit more than Pete. We'll see. I mean, Mike McDonald could be a disaster for all we know. I mean, we haven't seen a game yet, so who knows? But, I trust him to get the most out of those guys as well. Let me check and see if any other moves have gone down while I've hopped on here. I'll talk about a couple other ones. And I apologize, video's been a little all over the place, trying to get some of my points across here. I don't see anything. Joe Mixon's being released. Just saw that. It's been crazy. It's been a lot of moves. Brian Burns has gone to the Giants. Saquon Barkley to the Eagles. Kirk Cousins to the Falcons. Eric Armstead was released by the 49ers. I don't see them getting Williams and Armstead, but, he's out there. I think Chase Young is a free agent. Patrick Queen's still out there. Tons of guys still out there. Kevin Zeitler, a guard. Jonah Jackson goes to the Rams. I will say that Damian Lewis is out there as well. I would have liked to seen Seattle, maybe Zeitler coming from Baltimore, get involved in the guard market a little bit. I think the O-line still needs some work. I'm comfortable with Evan Brown at center. Charles Cross at left tackle is fine. You got to be a little concerned with Abe Lucas with the injury history. I obviously love Abe Lucas when he's healthy at right tackle. Even last year, the few games he came back for, you saw the pass protection improved and the running game improved in those few games, just having him back. But I mean, I don't know how much you can rely on Abe Lucas. I don't think Seattle should be free agent signing a right tackle, but it is something I think in the draft they're going to have to look at. You do have Damian Lewis. It's a free agent. I could take Lewis or leave him. Again, if they re-sign him, assume something Ryan Grubb and McDonald and Schneider see in him that they want to bring him back. And they've got the new O-line coach as well that I think was the Huskies O-line coach last year. I don't remember his name. But Washington had an outstanding offensive line last year as well. So that's things too. You got to remember as well, like Noah Fant's a good example. Do I think the Noah Fant of last year under Waldron was worth 2 years, 21 million? Probably not. But I do think under Ryan Grubb, you could see improvements. That's stuff to remember as well. Like different coaches bring different things to the table. So I'm not enamored with Damian Lewis, but maybe Grubb and the new O-line coach think they can get something out of him, unlock something. Still a young guy, and they do resign him. So I don't know. Geno Stone, who a lot of people had linked to the Seahawks, former Ravens safety, has gone to the Bengals, 2 years, 15 million. A little bit I watched on Stone. I think he's fine. I would have been okay with that deal, but I think his numbers and the perception of Geno Stone is a little inflated by the interceptions. And if, again, like Mike McDonald coached him last year, and right now, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. You do. I mean, if you don't, that's fine, but you're going to be really miserable if you don't at least give them a year or two benefit of the doubt on some of these things. That doesn't mean you can't be critical. But if McDonald didn't want Geno Stone at that price, and again, maybe Geno Stone wanted to go to the Bengals. There's so many factors in free agency to keep in mind. Maybe they did offer him a deal and he was like, nah, I want to go to Cincy. Who knows? Maybe got family there. You never know with some of these guys. But assuming Seattle wasn't in on him, I mean, who better to trust than Stone's defensive coordinator last year that, didn't feel they needed to get him. There's plenty of safeties left. I do think they need to make a free agency signing at safety. You just don't want to go in the draft with, I mean, actually, I don't know. Maybe they don't, because you still have Julian Love there, who I don't think Julian Love's the greatest safety ever, but I think he's fine for a year to hold down one of the positions and then draft somebody in that defense. They could bring back Diggs on a smaller deal. I don't think that'll happen, but it's a possibility. So again, just bottom line is, and again, I know I've repeated myself 100 times here, is just I would let this play out. It's kind of refreshing to have a new coaching staff here. I love Pete Carroll, but I think it was just, let's see what they do. I'm optimistic that Mike McDonald knows how to build a defense, and I think he can do it here. So I'm going to give him time to put together the defense the way he feels necessary. I mean, I could get mad that they didn't bring back Jordan Brooks, but I mean, if Mike McDonald knows a lot more about football than I do, so some random YouTuber wants, and I'm talking about myself here, not anybody else, wants Jordan Brooks back. Okay. But Coach McDonald, who knows a lot more, doesn't want back. Again, that's not to say we can't be critical of coaches in front of us. It's not what I'm saying at all. But it's just really hard for me to be upset when there's no, if McDonald was the coach here last year and the team was like 1-15, and then I'd be a little more like, okay, what are they trying to build for here? What's their end goal? What's the vision of this team? Right now, I just don't know, so I can't get too upset on them passing on guys or whatever it may be. And there's plenty of time left in free agency. So that's all I've got. I just want to talk about a little bit. Who do you guys want the Seahawks to sign? Let me know in the comments down below. I do have to do a couple things tonight, so I probably won't be able to respond to too many comments in this video. I usually try to, or give them a thumbs up, and I have to log off for a little bit and get some other family stuff taken care of. So, but let me know who you guys want the Seahawks to sign. Are you worried that they haven't been super active? Do you care about that? Or are you kind of with me where it's like, let's just let it play out with a new regime? Again, I put in quotes because John's been here, but you know what I mean. But yeah, do me a favor too. Hit that like button, hit subscribe. If the Seahawks do make any splash signings, I'll try to do some videos on it. Again, mostly sticking with Mariners on here, so I won't have a ton of Seahawks videos, but I just want to tell everybody to take a deep breath on it, because I see people on Twitter freaking out, and it is not worth it to freak out about anything that has happened yet. I'm excited for what Coach McDonald's going to do with this team. I think it's a great pairing with John Schneider, and let's let them build the roster. And then we can go back and Monday morning quarterback if they get it wrong. So have a great night, everybody. Go Hawks, go Mariners. Peace.